That means James Wood might get to swing the bat.
Infield in for the Angels. Outfield shading the opposite way. And now,
or not.
No, they're going to walk him for the 4th straight plate appearance. Well, not even the Angels fans they're groaning about that. So James Wood has doubled his intentional walk total, 4 coming into the game. He's been walked his last 4 times to the plate in the 5th, 7th, 9th, and 11th innings.
Charlie and Dave on the call yesterday. The Nats did beat the Angels 7-4 in extras, but James Wood became the first major leaguer since Barry Bonds to be intentionally walked 4 times in a game. Bonds was intentionally walked 4 times in 4 different games back in 2004. The only other players since at least 1955 to be intentionally walked 4 times in a game are James Wood, Roger Maris, Gary Templeton, Manny Ramirez, and Andre Dawson. Dawson, by the way, drew 5 intentional walks for the Cubs against the Reds back in 1990. James Wood is a star in the making. This dude is incredible. By the way, Sunday marked his 163rd game. So in his first 162, so he's played now a full season, 31 homers, 105 RBIs. Those are comparable stats to what Harper did in his first 162. He was at 31 and 77 RBIs. Soto was also at 31 home runs and 107 RBIs. James Wood, if you're not paying attention to the Nats, who aren't very good, is a superstar, and he'll very likely be in the All-Star game in a couple of weeks. Good morning, everybody. There is Jayden Daniels talk on the show today. Maybe a lot of it. PFF put out a career ceiling comp for Jayden Daniels and a career floor. So a career best case, who will he be? Career floor, career bottom, worst case, who will he be? PFF has answers to both. We won't take long to get to both of those things. Max is here with me. 2 guests on the show. Ben will join us at 10. Joel Corey was with me on Friday on my podcast talking about Terry McLaurin. You will hear some of that. Joel's been a long-time salary cap and contract expert for CBS Sports and was a long-time NFL agent. We love J.I. Halsell. We like Joel Corey. Just 2 different perspectives. Actually, they're similar on where this Terry McLaurin thing is going. I guess somebody sent me something. I don't know whether it was recent or not. I could not find whether or not it was super recent, but Albert Breer was on a show saying things remain distant between Terry and the team, but he still thinks it will get done. I wanted to read this from Pete. Pete is an Eagles fan, admittedly up front. He wrote, Kevin, the dumpster fire article, which we talked about last week, the gentleman in Jimmy Kempsky, I think it was, the PhillyVoice.com, did all 4 NFC East teams, including his own team, the Philadelphia Eagles, came up with 10 reasons the Skins would be a dumpster fire in 2025. And so Pete, an Eagles fan, writes, Kevin, the dumpster fire article had some very good reasoning behind it. And don't forget the one game that Washington won. Jalen Hurts got hurt early. Devontae Smith dropped a wide open pass, and the refs missed an obvious false start on the game-winning play. We should have swept you guys. You know what, Pete? It's funny because that was a game, man. December 22nd, 2024, Northwest Stadium, late in the season. 3 games left in the season. Washington really only needs to win 2 of the 3 to clinch a playoff berth, maybe only 1 of the 3. And they're down 21-7 early against the Eagles. Jalen Hurts gets hurt. He's out. 5 turnovers in the game for Washington, and yet somehow Jayden Daniels threw 5 touchdowns and had one of the great games of his rookie season. In fact, I went back after reading Pete's email last week, And I went through some of my notes from that game, and I called that game the masterpiece of Jayden Daniels' rookie year, even though it was imperfect because he did throw a rather awful interception in the fourth quarter. But that game was truly his masterpiece. He had in the game, he threw for 258 yards, 5 touchdowns. He rushed for 81 yards on 9 carries. He had a 4th down and 11 on the final play of the third quarter when Washington was down 27-14 and hanging by, a thread. And he scrambled for 29 yards on a 4th and 11 that kept them alive. He threw everything you could imagine in that game. Quick game, screens, sideline timing shots, deep shots, over the middle with anticipation. And I called it the masterpiece of his rookie season. It turned out that game was only the second game in NFL history played like it. I had forgotten that, but only 2 quarterbacks in the history of the game had thrown for more than 250, rushed for more than 75, and thrown for 5 touchdowns in a game. And the other was Cam Newton during his MVP season in 2015. The 4th and 11 was a spectacular play. There's another run he has on 4th and 4, which is insane. And then, of course, 3 touchdown drives, including a 2-point conversion at the end, 22 points on 4 possessions in the fourth quarter to overcome 5 turnovers and a big deficit, including a 13-point deficit in the fourth quarter to beat the Eagles 36-33. Now, when Pete wrote what he wrote, I certainly remembered Jalen Hurts getting hurt and leaving the game. And in my game notes, I said that was the most impactful play of the game because Washington had already planned to load the box to try to slow Philadelphia down from running the football. But without Hurts as part of the run game, Philly was a different team. It wasn't necessarily that Kenny Pickett, wasn't going to be out there with the ability to throw it, but he couldn't run it. The quarterback was not a part of the run game without Jalen Hurts in the game, and it changed the game completely. Now, Jalen Hurts, as we said many times, from the moment that game ended through the entire offseason, and we're saying it again today, he does not play defense, and they couldn't stop Washington when the game mattered most. And Jayden Daniels was incredible. I certainly remember Hurts getting injured. I certainly remember Devontae Smith dropping that 3rd down pass. Philadelphia is up 30-28. It's the 2-minute warning, right before the 2-minute warning. It's 3rd down and 5. And Kenny Pickett, if you recall, didn't play poorly in relief. He actually played pretty well in the game. And on 3rd and 5, he's got a wide open Devontae Smith who completely loses Noah I on the route. And he's wide open, and Pickett puts it there right on time, right between the numbers, and he dropped it. If he catches it, it's probably game over. Washington would have had 1 timeout after the 2-minute warning. So even if they held Philly to a field goal or without getting another 1st down, they would have gotten it back with, 20-something seconds left, down by 5. Now, they had, overcome that against Chicago with a Hail Mary. You certainly wouldn't put it past them, but that would have been near game over. What I didn't remember, though, and I went back and watched, was Cornelius Lucas on the game-winning touchdown pass to Jamison Crowder, false starting, which he definitely did. He definitely did. But that wouldn't have ended the game. Washington still would have had, the clock would have, stopped, and it would have been right where it was, and Washington would have had another opportunity instead of from the Philadelphia 9 or 10 yard line, from the 14 or 15 yard line. But God, that touchdown pass to Crowder was spectacular. Spectacular. Such great timing on the throw. Yeah, that was a great game. That was a masterpiece with imperfections, but still a masterpiece. It was his best QBR game of the year, 96.3 QBR in the game. He had multiple 90 pluses during the course of the season. The Cincinnati game on Monday Night Football, the Arizona game, which was the week after that Monday night game. He was incredible against the Giants on the road at a 95.7 QBR, and then the 96.3 was his highest QBR for whatever it's worth, better than passer rating, still not perfect, of the season. And then he had 91.8 against the Lions in the postseason. I mean, he was spectacular. But who's going to ever forget that game? I did not recall until I'm like, what false start is he talking about? Yeah, Cornelius Lucas definitely false started from the right tackle position on the game-winning touchdown pass. I had forgotten that. Look, you can go through all of last season, as we have many times, and talk about the good fortune that they had. It started in week 2 with the Giants missing their kicker, which obviously impacted a game in which it was a 3-point walk-off field goal. They missed 3 extra points, were missed 2-pointers. And Malik Neighbors, by the way, dropped a pass on 4th down. I mean, there were 2 4th down drops, or 2 big drops in the season that Washington benefited from. Obviously, the Hail Mary game. I mean, how many times do you complete that? The New Orleans game. New Orleans had a 2-point conversion to win the game. It was a catchable ball. It was a good, well-defended play. The Philly game, there was good fortune there. Atlanta missed a field goal at the gun in regulation, and the game went to overtime. Now, it was a super long field goal. I think it was 55 yards, but they missed that. But the overarching theme about 2024 was not like this inside straight, good fortune, good luck season. It's not what it was. It was a season about a quarterback taking over and strapping a team to his back and leading them to 12 wins in the midst of the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time and one of the best recent quarterback seasons of all time. And why would that change? Why would he be any less in year 2? I mean, some people have theories as to that. I don't see it coming. Health is everything for him. So anyway, I do want to start the show with this thing that many of you sent me. It's a PFF story about ceilings and floors on every second-year NFL quarterback. So you take, all of these 6 that were taken in the draft last year: Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix. And PFF wrote a column, ceilings and floors for every second-year quarterback, in terms of, what they will eventually become. Caleb Williams, the ceiling, Jordan Love. That's really his ceiling. Isn't his ceiling higher than Jordan Love? And then his floor is just bust. I do think that is the floor for Caleb Williams. Bust seems right. On Drake May, the ceiling is Trevor Lawrence. The floor is Daniel Jones. Michael Penix Jr., the ceiling is Justin Herbert. The floor is Jameis Winston. I like Michael Penix Jr. I have a feeling he's going to be really good. The key with him, of course, is also staying healthy, because he's had some serious injuries in his college career, for sure. J.J. McCarthy, who's not taken one NFL snap. The ceiling is Joe Burrow, and the floor is Sam Darnold. And then for Bo Nix, the ceiling is Drew Brees. Part of that, I'm sure, is because he plays for Sean Payton. And the floor is Mac Jones. So now we come to Jayden Daniels. And they've got a ceiling for Jayden, and they've got a floor for Jayden. This is ceilings and floors for every second-year NFL quarterback ahead of the 2025 season. Daniels was otherworldly, they write, in his first NFL campaign, etching his name into PFF history. His ceiling is now that of Lamar Jackson, and his floor remains incredibly high. So the floor, in terms of worst case, is a quarterback currently in the NFL. I want us to think of quarterbacks that have played in the NFL, not just quarterbacks in the NFL. So I want your ceiling, what you think Jayden Daniels will become, and I want your floor. I think it's not just the success of the career. There has to be a comparable stylistically. Lamar Jackson is a comparable stylistically in terms of the ceiling. Now, I think Jayden's ceiling is higher than Lamar Jackson's, and I'll get to my ceiling comp on Jayden Daniels here shortly. The floor quarterback for Jayden, I'll tell you who that is when we come back. But that is a current quarterback on the PFF list as well. And I'll tell you what they wrote about Jayden. But I want you to think about what's Jayden's career ceiling. It doesn't have to be a quarterback in the NFL now. It can be a quarterback from the past. Who do you think Jayden Daniels' best case ceiling will become? And then what do you think his floor is, the absolute worst case for Jayden Daniels? Give me a comp for that too. 301-230-0980. I'll give you PFF's floor. The ceiling is Lamar Jackson. I'll give you PFF's floor for Jayden Daniels. Then I'll give you my ceiling and my floor, and Max will do the same, but I want your calls at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Don't forget, we are also streaming on the Team 980 YouTube page. Craig's on from 4 to 7. I'm on from 10 to 1. Don't forget, like the stream and subscribe to the stream, that is, not the scream, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. Focus put out a story this weekend, ceilings and floors for every second-year NFL quarterback. Kind of looking at what they think their best case will be and what the worst case will be. For Jayden Daniels, the best case career ceiling, Lamar Jackson. Worst case, the floor, Kyler Murray. So I would look at it this way, and I want yours. What would be, you can use players from the past, and I'm going to. What's your ceiling for Jayden Daniels? What's the best he can turn into career-wise? What's the worst he'll ever be? I think we have to, obviously, for the purposes of this conversation, take injury out of it, okay? I mean, you can't say, well, the worst is it ends up being a one-year career because he has, an injury that's career-ending. We're going to take that out of the equation. If he ends up having a 10-plus year career, what was the floor? What was the best case? And maybe just by saying 10 years, that's almost a giveaway that the floor has to be pretty high if he plays 10 years. But let's say, 5+ years, okay, minimum. For me, and I've talked about this comp many times before because there are a lot of comps. And on one level, I actually don't even want to comp him to anybody because I think the upside, the ceiling is so high. Like, I think the ceiling is all-time great where people in a few years start to get compared to him. I do feel that way. But coming out, I said many times that Steve, Randall Cunningham was always a comp that a lot of the analysts used, but Cunningham was not the same as a thrower. He just wasn't. Now, size-wise, body type-wise, yes, but Randall always had this wind-up throw. That's not Jayden. Jayden's a first-class thrower of the football. Randall had a big arm. Not saying he didn't. To me, there are two players that I will list as ceiling and floor, and they're both, really good all-time players. The ceiling for me is Steve Young. I think Steve Young, a first ballot Hall of Famer, and Jayden play very similarly. Now, remember, Steve Young was shorter. He was on the 6'6", 1" kind of height. Steve Young also didn't really get his opportunity until he was like 30 years old, 31 years old, because he played behind, after playing in the USFL, played behind Joe Montana. But that 3 or 4 year stretch when he took over for Montana, 92-ish, they played Washington in the postseason that year in 92. Unbelievable game at Candlestick. The 49ers survived. Then they lost to the Cowboys in the first of the 3 Jimmy Johnson impacted Cowboy teams. He wasn't obviously the coach of the last one. Barry Switzer was. But Steve Young, I've always felt, is almost underrated as one of the greatest quarterbacks. He was a first ballot Hall of Famer. When he retired, he had the highest passer rating in NFL history. He was a great thrower of the football in every sense. Quick game. Obviously the 49ers were very West Coast based in sort of the attack, but he threw quick game in an outstanding way. He could throw the deep ball. He could throw the intermediate ball. He threw with great anticipation. He was really smart. And then as a runner, in that moment, before Vic, before, Lamar, before, Josh Allen, he was there with Randall. He was there with, guys like Tarkington and Staubach. But Young was different, man. Young was elusive, eyes in the back of his head. You just couldn't get to him. He had great speed. He had great wiggle in the open field. And then he was competitive as hell, too. Like, if it came to it and he needed to lower his shoulder to get an extra couple yards for a first down, he did it. I almost don't want to limit him on the ceiling to Steve Young, but at the same time, first ballot Hall of Famer. And for me, I've always felt like Steve Young's got to be in the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. I don't care that his greatness didn't start until later in his career. He was super elite. And had he played the entire way. Had Montana not been there, I mean, we may view Steve Young in a way that we view Montana and Brady and others, because he would have been the starting quarterback on a lot of those Super Bowl winning teams. I mean, Montana always ranks higher than Steve Young, as I think he should. But Steve Young, I think always doesn't, you see him on lists. He's in a lot of top 10s. He's also on some lists, doesn't get mentioned until 14 or 15, somewhere around there. Steve Young would be, I've mentioned him many times when it comes to Jayden. It's also the intelligence part too. Like, Jayden is super intelligent, super into it, really competitive. He's a right-handed Steve Young, best case. I think his ceiling is actually a little bit higher, but in terms of the greatest runner-passer combinations of all time, I mean, we may ultimately just say it's Mahomes and or Allen, because I don't think Lamar is Jayden's ceiling is higher than Lamar's. It's higher than Lamar's. He's a much more natural thrower. He's a much more natural anticipation thrower. There's a big difference between Lamar Jackson, even now, off the best season he's ever had throwing the football, and Jayden. So Steve Young, I'm going to leave as the ceiling. The floor is another lefty. The floor to me is Michael Vick, which wouldn't be that bad. I mean, it's not like Michael Vick didn't have, an incredible career. I almost went with Randall, because Randall had a very long career. Randall was like a 5-time Pro Bowler, finished in the MVP, runner-up situation 3 or 4 times. But Michael Vick, I took two lefties. Remember, Michael Vick missed some of those years, when he was in prison. But Michael Vick would be the floor. Like, I think 5 Pro Bowls. Hold on, I looked this up earlier. He's the second all-time leading rusher in NFL history, behind Lamar Jackson, who passed him this year from a quarterback standpoint. Michael Vick could throw it. Now, I always felt like Michael Vick could throw the deep ball better than he could throw anything else, that he sometimes was inconsistent with the easy stuff. But Michael Vick had a long career. Michael Vick was a massive factor in his seasons. That would be the floor for me. Vick is a higher floor than Kyler Murray at this point. Maybe I'm going too low on the floor, and maybe I'm not going high enough on the ceiling. But there are my ceiling floor comparables for Jayden. 2 lefties: Steve Young, ceiling, first ballot Hall of Famer; Michael Vick, the floor. Michael Vick, let's not forget, after he came back, he had played more years after he got out of prison than he had played before. But what he was trending towards in Atlanta prior to that was perhaps something approximating a Hall of Fame career. He had made the Pro Bowl. I've got it now. He had made the Pro Bowl in every single season in the NFL in which he had played a full season. And he had been injured a couple of times and didn't play a lot as a rookie. Didn't start but 2 games as a rookie back in 2001. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Max, ceiling, floor, Jayden Daniels.
So the ceiling for me is, I'm only going to go with guys I've watched like in my lifetime. But the thing for Jayden is, like, he's such a hard worker, and there's only like so many guys who have that kind of in them. And so Peyton Manning would be like a more athletic version of Peyton Manning is what I'm trying to say his ceiling could be.
But we're trying to comp it not just to success, sure, but to stylistically. They're the opposites stylistically.
Yeah, I hear that. So Russell Wilson is kind of like my big comp to him, just because how
as a floor.
Yeah, more or less. Like if it goes the way that Russ's career has gone. But I think Jayden has got a better head on his shoulders than Russ. Russ kind of gets he gets caught up in the limelight, caught up in the spotlight and all that. and it goes to his head. Jayden is the type of guy to like just put his head down, keep working. So in terms of like the work ethic is kind of why I bring up the Peyton Manning comp.
Okay. All right. So you got Peyton Manning as the ceiling?
More or less, yeah. A more athletic Peyton, yes.
That's not your best effort. I love you dearly, but Peyton Manning's the opposite stylistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you. In terms of like natural thrower and just learning the offense, like putting your nose into the book.
But Peyton was never going to rush.
No, that's absolutely true.
Rusher.
Which is why I throw the more athletic out there.
All right. By the way, I considered Russell Wilson for the floor for me, but Russell Wilson has never and will never be the thrower that Jayden is. Russell Wilson's biggest issue throughout his career has been height. He has not been able to see the field, consistently enough, which is one of the reasons, he would start to move quickly so that he could see the field. Now, Russell Wilson as a runner before the last, few years, he was a great off-schedule quarterback. I mean, Russell Wilson's a Hall of Fame off-schedule quarterback. Russell Wilson's career is going to be interesting when it is all said and done in terms of whether or not we view it as a Hall of Fame career. That's for another day. But I actually did consider Russell Wilson for the floor, but I think Vic, I guess Vic would be a lower floor than Russell Wilson career-wise, probably.
Career-wise, yeah, but in terms of like just athleticism and the I'm here on the scene, this is my time type thing, like because that Vic was unmatched because he took the league and the world by storm.
The PFF Kyler Murray thing, I don't see it at all. Kyler Murray is legitimately 5'8".
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what his listed height is. You can look that up. I'm going to guess he's probably listed at 5'11", but he literally is 5'8", 5'9" tops. That's not, it makes him have to play a certain way. Look, he is a brilliant playmaker at the quarterback position. I mean, in terms of this last, 7-8 years, however long he's been in the league, what year was he drafted? 2018?
Yeah.
2019, whatever it was. In terms of just creating something, out of nothing, but he, like Russell Wilson, can't see over the line of scrimmage. It's his biggest problem. So he's got to be a playmaker. He's got to be an off-schedule quarterback. Jayden will never have to be that. Jayden's nearly 6'4". He's 6'3" and 5/8 or whatever. And he can see it. And he can, the way he throws it, he will never have an issue with that kind of vision. Kyler Murray, to me, is a terrible comp for Jayden in any way, shape, or form. I also don't think Lamar's a great comp. I just think Jayden's a different quarterback than Lamar. Look, Lamar's speed, his flat-out speed as a runner, maybe all time. Is there a faster, great running quarterback than Lamar Jackson all time? I don't think so. But passing-wise, no. All right, I want to hear what you guys say. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Ceiling for Jayden Daniels' career, comp, and floor. I've got Steve Young as my ceiling. Michael Vick is my floor. Max has Peyton Manning as the ceiling and Russell Wilson as the floor. Let's start with Brian in Alexandria. Brian, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? How are you?
I'm well, Brian.
So before I go, and I know you've probably talked about this before. As you all talk about it, it's so difficult because we could be possibly seeing something that we literally haven't seen before.
Right.
With his combination of being able to pass and run. Have we had dual threat quarterbacks? Yes, but to the level that he can do each, I'm not quite so sure. So with that being said, I'm going to start with my ceiling because my floor, because you and I had the same one. I think barring injury, the worst case scenario is we're looking at a Michael Vick, a quarterback who is just dynamic athletically and can flick it. And from a team success standpoint, had some team wins, and then from an individual standpoint, had some Pro Bowls and MVP races. I think that's as worse as it gets for Jayden. My ceiling, I'm going to go Patrick Mahomes, and here's why. Stylistically, I understand it's not the best comp because Mahomes is nowhere near the athlete that Daniels is, but he is athletic, and he knows how to use his athleticism to complement his processing and his throwing ability. From a team success standpoint, I could see multiple Super Bowls. I can see multiple MVPs. The one, as a Commander fan, the one limiting factor, and it's just we got to see how it plays out. What Mahomes has and Andy Reid is priceless and is unmatched.
Yeah.
And we already know that Kingsbury is going to be gone. But to have that Andy Reid or like a McVay type for as of now your entire career, that's kind of hard to compete with when you're talking about team success.
Yeah.
So that's my floor.
I like both. Brian, here's what I would say about Mahomes. I should have said this because I, of course, considered Mahomes. To your point, I could definitely see multiple MVPs, multiple Super Bowls. Mahomes is not the athlete that Jayden is, like you said, but in terms of he is a high-end athlete and a high-end playmaker and off-schedule quarterback. He's one of the greats of all time. Here's what's actually interesting about Mahomes and Jayden. I sometimes think Mahomes bails and goes off schedule too quickly. There have been some criticisms about Mahomes and in-timing throws, that he likes to, always look for the next biggest thing. Mahomes is not in to just taking a profit, taking a nice little, 5-yard gain. I sometimes think Jayden, in a weird way, is on his way to being a more mature quarterback than Mahomes. Look, Mahomes is going to be, when all is said and done, Mount Rushmore, one of the 4 greatest of all time. I mean, he might already be on that list for a lot of people. So it's a hell of a ceiling. But it's interesting because I think that there are differences between the two of them. Thanks, Brian. Good call. Really good call. We're looking for Jayden's ceiling for his career comp and his floor. PFF had his ceiling, Lamar Jackson, had his floor as Kyler Murray. We're looking at career ceiling floor. I've got Steve Young as the ceiling, Michael Vick as the floor. Dan in Fort Washington. Dan, go ahead.
Thanks, Kevin, for taking my call.
Sure.
Love the show.
Thanks.
So just like the previous call with Brian, my ceiling is also with Jayden is also Patrick Mahomes. So I understand, Brian pointed out the qualities, but I think the biggest similarity that they have as ceiling is the confidence and leadership. I think skill-wise, they are different, but just the confidence that they can, they have the will for them to win the game, whether if it's coming from behind, or even if it's a really close game. I see a lot of the confidence and leadership towards Jayden with Patrick Mahomes. Comparing, like he had so many great moments with the Philly game, the Atlanta game, and then also the wild card game. So I see a lot of that, and hopefully that will lead to like league MVPs and Super Bowls. And also his floor, and also a current player, and still need to know like what his career will be, is CJ Stroud. They're both great game managers, very intelligent. They have high QBRs. And he was always comparable with both of their rookie seasons. I think CJ Stroud is a very great pocket passer, and I know he doesn't use much of his legs like Jayden, but I just see that he's able to manage the game, just enough for them to win, and then not turning the ball over. So I see that as his floor. So thanks for taking my call.
That's an interesting floor. I mean, the one thing that I would say is I don't think Jayden is ever going to be a guy that manages a game so, he's not going to lose a game for you. Jayden's always going to be, I shouldn't say always because we don't know what the surrounding cast will be, but Jayden will always be one of the top 2 or 3 reasons you win games, period. And we saw that last year. But I actually think CJ Stroud has a lot of that in him. I'm actually a big Stroud fan. I think Stroud's really good. And I think you saw some of that in the games against the Chiefs late in the year. The Christmas Day game, I think it was, or maybe it was the Saturday before Christmas, and then the playoff game. I thought he was really good. The playoff game against the Chargers, remember, they had issues with the offensive line all season long, even with Tunsil. They had issues. It was not the same, level of O-line. He was sacked a ton last year. I mean, this was a 52 sack season for Stroud last year after a rookie season in which he was sacked just 38 times. I like Stroud a lot, and I think there are a lot of similarities. Jayden's just much more of an explosive playmaker. I mean, not that CJ Stroud can't run and can't make plays off schedule, but Jayden is truly like, if you let him get out of the pocket and the line of scrimmage is not defended, he can go for 80. He can go for 60, and it'll happen quickly. That's not what Stroud is. But I do like CJ Stroud. All right, if you're on hold, stay there. We have another line open if you want to jump on, 301-230-0980. What is the career comp ceiling for Jayden Daniels? Mine is Steve Young. I feel like I could have gone even higher than Steve Young. And then what is the Jayden Daniels career floor? I went Michael Vick. PFF went Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. What do you got? Career floor? All right. Worst case, career ceiling, best case comps for Jayden Daniels. 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show. You can listen to us right here on the Team 980, also on the team980.com. You can watch us as we stream on the Team 980 YouTube page.
All right, we got some breaking news in the NFL. Jalen Ramsey is on the move. The Dolphins and the Steelers have finalized a blockbuster trade to send the All-Pro corner to Pittsburgh. Jalen Ramsey's adjusted contract includes a $1.5 million raise in 2025, making his salary $26.6 million a year. Pittsburgh is loading up. And over the weekend, the NHL draft, the Caps selected 5 players, including first-round pick Lyden Lakovic. Brian McClellan and Chris Patrick also mentioned that they tried to prioritize getting players with size. All of the picks came in at 6'1" or above. 3 of the 5 picks are 6'4". And the WNBA is expanding to 3 cities, Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia over the next 5 years, expected to give the league 18 total teams. And speaking of the WNBA, Angel Reese is on a hot streak. She becomes the first WNBA player to have 15 rebounds in 4 straight games. In the Nats, they win last night in extras by a score of 7-4. Jacob Young ties the game with an RBI single in the 9th, and James Wood had a historic day at the plate. He becomes the first player to be intentionally walked 4 times in a game since Barry Bonds. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Jalen Ramsey traded to the Steelers. The Steelers are going for it, man. They'll sign TJ Watt too in the next few weeks. We have not found what the Steelers had to give up for Jalen Ramsey. We'll let you know. Also, it looks like there may be some Nats news at 11 a.m., so stay tuned for that. We'll let you know about it. But right now, off of Pro Football Focus's story over the weekend, ceilings and floors for all of the upcoming second-year quarterbacks. Remember, 6 taken in the top 12 of the 2024 draft. Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., J.J. McCarthy, and Bo Nix. They did career ceilings and career floors. They did ceilings and floors. It was all low. It was all current players. They didn't specifically say whether this was career or just for the upcoming season, but we're doing it as a career. All right, what's Jayden Daniels' career ceiling comp? My comp for Jayden, if he reaches what I think he can reach, Steve Young, first ballot Hall of Famer, MVP, Super Bowl champion. Remember, Steve Young would have had many more MVPs and more Super Bowls had he not played behind Montana. But I want kind of a stylistic comp too, not just a production or success, resume comp. For me, the floor is Michael Vick. I hesitate saying like, well, his ceiling is the greatest of all time, even though I think there's a chance that 10 years from now we're going to be talking about Jayden Daniels' career as an all-time career. But Steve Young's career was a top 10 QB career, in my opinion, and they stylistically are so similar, other than left-handed, right-handed. And other than the height, Steve Young was shorter than Jayden. But the way Steve Young as a dual threat, before true dual threat offense existed in the NFL, he was such a threat to defenses with his legs. And then he got rid of it so quickly. On time, was super smart, threw with anticipation, quick game outstanding in that West Coast, Walsh offense of the 49ers 80s into the 90s. I mean, I've always felt like Steve Young was underrated historically. I mean, you're not going to find him any worse than 14th or 15th all time, and you'll find him in a lot of top 10s. But Jayden's game is so similar to Steve Young's game. All right, 301-230-0980. Our guy Billy in Chantilly is on hold. I can only imagine what the floor is. The floor is probably Mahomes. Go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, as usual, I have to bring a little bit of a bigger idea to the conversation. The floor is Jayden Daniels. There is no comparison to what this guy is going to be able to do in
the
this
floor
league.
is what you said, Jayden Daniels
himself. Yeah, himself.
Oh, okay.
And the ceiling is Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky or Muhammad Ali. That's literally where the ceiling is for this guy. This guy may be on the Mount Rushmore of the greatest players of all time. If Adam Peters can figure a way to manage the salary cap and we can figure a way to keep him upright, you're literally talking about one of the greatest athletes that ever played in any professional sport. That's the ceiling.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Billy. By the way, here's the trade for Jalen Ramsey. It's a bit of a shocker. What's Minka? He's getting traded straight up for Minka Fitzpatrick. What's Fitzpatrick's contract situation?
Minka's he's 28. I'm pulling up the spot track now because this was just a moment where me and Brian were chatting about it in the booth, and then I refreshed Adam Schefter's timeline and just hit myself with the biggest whoa ever. Let me pull up his contract.
He's got 2 years left on his deal.
Man.
2 years left on his deal with the Steelers.
For a 30-plus-year-old Jalen Ramsey. That's a wild trade.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, because I really like having Minka on the back end of that aging secondary, but now that he's not there,
yeah,
that presents a whole.
Big Tony would have to weigh in on this and tell us.
I'm sure he's listening somewhere.
Yeah. All right. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Ian. Ian, go ahead. Hello, Ian. Is Ian not there? Or is it that I just can't hear
You
him?
have me?
There we go.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, dude, I don't know what's going on with your phones recently.
Okay.
I will say Mahomes is the ceiling, and I will agree with you on Michael Vick as the floor. And the thought process is he had the greatest rookie season ever. He took a pretty awful roster and what I consider a pretty mediocre coaching staff to the NFC title as a rookie. So based on that surrounding, I would say, yes, his comp is being one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, if not the best ever, based on the small sample size we've seen.
Yeah, and we would say that about Mahomes. And, we would not say that for my ceiling that Steve Young's in the category with Mahomes, to be fair. And I want to put him in that category, and I think he can be. It's just that Steve Young's such a great, for me anyway, my opinion, such a great stylistic comp for Jayden's game. I mean, and Steve Young, had he, and you know this, if Steve Young had been starting and playing from his early to mid-20s on in the Walsh system with Rice and with Taylor and, Roger Craig and everybody else on that team, he would be considered, I think, a Mount Rushmore quarterback. It's just that he didn't start his career legitimately until he was 30 years old in the NFL. That's the thing. Yeah. Go ahead.
If I can chime in on Steve Young, I'm a Steve Young fan. I think he's a Hall of Famer, no debate.
Well, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Yeah.
First ballot Hall of Famer, no debate there. But I also think we have a little bit of revisionist history because remember, he struggled mightily to get over the Cowboys for a while due to his play. So I'm not sure we can extrapolate and say,
well, he did eventually get through the Cowboys.
Sure,
yeah.
But I'm just saying that
had one of the most dominant Super Bowl performances team-wise too, when they crushed the Chargers.
Yeah, again, I'm not saying he's not great. I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. I'm just saying this notion that if he had played longer, he would have been great. He had quite a long runway, and there were years where he struggled in the playoffs, and I think that has to be taken into account when saying he would be a Mount Rushmore guy, because the Mount Rushmore right now is Brady, Montana, Mahomes, etc. Guys that have just a ton more.
I get that. My point is, and maybe what you're saying is, had he, started at 26 or 25 years old for the 49ers, that his playoff, and by the way, he was 8-6 career postseason.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I mean, Peyton Manning ultimately ended up with a winning record, just barely. But remember, too, some of those late seasons for Steve Young were concussion oriented. Remember, he was totally in that concussion era where you came back the next week and played. And towards the end of his career, it wasn't pretty, even though he was still making Pro Bowls. But yeah. All right. Thanks, Ian. As always, appreciate it. If you're on hold, stay there. If you want to weigh in, we've got a phone line open, 301-230-0980. Who's the career ceiling comp for Jayden and the floor career comp for Jayden? I've got Steve Young as the ceiling. Michael Vick is the floor. Who do you have? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980. So there's a big trade in the NFL today, and we just got the details from Adam Schefter. Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, along with tight end Jonnu Smith, coming off his first Pro Bowl season as a 29-year-old tight end, for Minkah Fitzpatrick and a late round pick. So essentially a 2-for-1 on the players. Ramsey and Smith to Pittsburgh, Minkah Fitzpatrick to Miami. So there we go. God, I was thinking, Max, Minkah Fitzpatrick for Jalen Ramsey? That doesn't make any sense because of the age.
Yeah, it was very perplexing. I like how they drip fed us every player that got dropped in this deal, because Jonnu Smith just became a part of it. It's very interesting. A lot of people the immediate reaction on Twitter is what are the Steelers doing?
Well, they're going all in for this year. And
exactly.
Jonnu Smith is actually going to be a great target along with Freiermuth.
Mm-hmm.
But you can move Jonnu around a little bit more than you can with Freiermuth. It'll be interesting. That's going to be an interesting team to watch this year. From James, don't forget Steve Young did throw for 6 touchdowns in the Super Bowl. Yes, he did. In that 49-26 win over the Chargers, the year that they finally did get past Dallas. 24 of 36, 325 for 6 touchdowns, no picks in the Super Bowl. His overall starting record in the postseason was 8-6 in games that he started in the postseason. Played in others, but the overall record in games started 8-6 in the postseason. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We're looking for the comp for the ceiling of Jayden's career. So my comp is Steve Young. That's why we were talking about Steve Young. I think Jayden stylistically plays like Steve Young. Steve Young was, 2-time MVP, a multi-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, and a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's my ceiling for him. And then my floor is Michael Vick, 301-230-0980 if you want to weigh in. Max had Peyton Manning, not the best stylistic fit, but accomplishment, smart thrower, and had Russell Wilson as the floor. Let's go to Dan in North Carolina. Dan, thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for taking my call. My ceiling for Jayden is John Elway, and I think there's a lot of similarities there on just the way they play the game, and not only that, but Jayden's already proven and same with John, you're never out of a game. You were never out of a game when John Elway had the ball in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And the same rings true for Jayden. Whether he needed to run for 10 yards or throw a bullet, Elway was always making the play. And he carried a bunch of mediocre Denver teams, to the Super Bowl. So I think that's my ceiling, especially if he can get a ring or 2 rings. Floor-wise, I was kind of having trouble with that. But, if this was Jayden's best year, ever, or maybe he has, 1 or 2 years like this, but nothing, much better, I would say my floor is Dante Culpepper. Culpepper had a great...
Yeah, he had that one really good year in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, 2004. He probably would have been the MVP, but Peyton Manning had a all-time great year that year.
Right.
But yeah, man, if to me, he reminds me so much of John Elway, just because in the fourth quarter he makes magic happen.
No doubt. That's a great comp. Elway for many years was my number one. And I think we got into this conversation recently, and I forget why we did. But to me, the biggest difference between Elway and Jayden, Elway had truly one of the 2 or 3 best arms in the game every year he was in the NFL. He had a Marino, Aaron Rodgers kind of arm. Jayden doesn't have that arm strength. I mean, he's got plenty of arm strength. It's more than satisfactory. And he throws with great touch, throws a great deep ball, the whole thing. He can make every throw. Elway truly could, like Mahomes and Rodgers, he could throw it from the 10 to the goal line. I mean, he could throw it 80, 90 yards. I mean, 90 might be a stretch. But Elway, one of the all-time great arms. But you're right. The Elway, for his era, no game was ever over as if John Elway was quarterbacking your team. No game. He was so clutch when he got the ball late in the game with his team needing a score. Thanks, Dan. Let's go to DC. DC, go ahead.
Kevin, how you doing, brother?
What's up, DC? How are you, man?
Man, all is well. Excellent points with the Steve Young, but I think my guy from North Carolina, he got you with the comp of John Elway. I like that one, but like you said, his arm was amazing. But I'm going to say, because Billy and Chantilly has sold me, I'm going to say Elway is his floor, and he's going to redefine the quarterback position with, like, his completion percentage is amazing, his ability to improv and make plays, and this in multiple ways. He can throw the ball, he can run the ball, you know what I mean? We've even seen him run a couple plays for him to catch the ball, but it hasn't been successful. But I think he's going to redefine the quarterback position, and it's definitely good comps out there, whether it's the floor or the ceiling, but I'm going to go with those guys as his floor because of what he did his rookie year.
I like those. By the way, I just looked up Dante Culpepper. How about this season? I mean, I knew I didn't remember the year like our last caller did. I remember he had an unbelievable year and was the near MVP. In 2004, Dante Culpepper threw for 4,717 yards, 39 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions. Ridiculous season. And then what was he from a rushing standpoint that year? He rushed for 406 yards that year. Not quite the 880 whatever Jayden rushed for. But, man, Dante Culpepper had a couple of really good seasons there in Minnesota. Thanks for the call. By the way, the Nats news that we saw sort of trending, our guy Eric Flack had put out a tweet last hour, 11 a.m. announcement. And I said to Max during the break, I said, I wonder if this is going to be a stadium sponsor naming rights announcement. No, they're announcing that the AARP is the team's inaugural jersey patch partner.
Aura.
What?
That's Aura right there. Love AARP, Kev. That's
but hold on. Teams have a jersey patch partner?
Yeah.
Okay, and the Nats haven't had one of those either?
No, they have not. They haven't
had a naming rights deal for the stadium, and they haven't had a jersey patch partner.
All I'm going to say is all this money better go to paying James Wood. That's what this money should go towards.
Okay. I see. It looks like Ryan Zimmerman is modeling the jersey. Okay. Congrats to the Nats. I don't want to knock it. It's revenue. Just use it to start buying some players. That would be nice. All right, when we come back, Joel Corey had a good perspective on the Terry McLaurin deal. Joel is the salary cap and contract expert for CBSSports.com. He joined me on Friday on my podcast. I'm gonna play some of that for you. You'll hear what he said about Terry. If you want to weigh in on the Jayden stuff, just tweet me at Kevin Sheehan, DC. joining us right now is Joel Corey. It's been a while since we've had Joel on the show, former sports agent, and he is for CBSSports.com, their NFL contract and salary cap expert, at Corey Joel on X, on Twitter. So you know the situation going on here with Terry McLaurin. So let's start there. How and when do you think this gets resolved? How does it play out here over the next few weeks?
I suspect this gets done right around the time training camp starts at the latest. Dan Quinn had a very good approach at the mini camp when he said something to the effect that this is one of those times where football and business intersect. He's just rolling with the punches. So I anticipate that he'll be there, if not the starting training camp, a couple of days thereafter. I'd be shocked if this ends up being one of these long, drawn-out contract disputes.
So what do you think the deal looks like when they get there?
Well, to me, it's a very narrow range. One, if the Commanders are below T. Higgins, that's a non-starter, and I would be insulted if I'm Terry McLaurin because T. Higgins is the number 2 receiver. Top of the number 2 receiver market is $28.75 million per year. Might be a number 1 receiver if he got into the open market and was playing someplace else, but in Cincinnati, he's a number 2 receiver. All number 2 receivers aren't relevant. Now, I wouldn't be paying more than CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb's a better receiver. That deal was done last year. That's at $34 million per year. That had $100 million in guarantees, $67 million fully guaranteed at signing. The most recent relevant data point to me is DK Metcalf. Metcalf, in his trade from Seattle to Pittsburgh, signed a somewhat backloaded 4-year extension, averaging just under $33 million per year, where the Steelers can really get out of it after 2 years and paying $60 million. That being said, I don't really see a deal that gets done below Brandon Ayuk. That was a guy who's younger, signed for $30 million per year, 4-year extension last year with San Francisco, with $76 million in total guarantees, $45 million fully guaranteed at signing. You got a small, narrow range. One of the problems is age, because you're talking someone who's going to be 30 really at the early part of the regular season in September. And DK Metcalf is 2 years younger. You don't really have a lot of comps for 30-year-old receivers that work in this case, so that's probably the biggest hurdle.
From the team standpoint, do you see this being, you've done so many of these and you've watched some of these, so many of these play out. I thought right from the beginning, like you, it's going to get done, but it's tricky because of his age, as you mentioned. And the other part is kind of determining what Terry McLaurin really is. He's clearly a number 1, but where is he on the list of number 1s? Do you think that that's a part of this negotiation as well? And I'm curious as to where you think he ranks among number 1 receivers.
Well, if the agent is thinking, or Jamar Chase just became the highest paid non-quarterback, there's a big difference or gap between where Justin Jefferson is and where Jamar Chase is, and I need to narrow that gap. That's got to be a non-starter for the Commanders. We're talking $40.25 million versus $35 million. I don't know anyone who wouldn't take those two guys over Terry.
Right.
So if he's thinking that range, he's going to have to readjust expectations. There were six receivers last year who were named to the All-Pro teams by the Associated Press, the official one.
Yep.
He was one of them.
Yep.
He arguably had a career year last year. One thing that he can point to is look at the rotating cast of characters he's had throwing him the football until last year. It ain't pretty. There hasn't been quarterback stability. It's been mediocrity, and he's been very productive. He's outproduced DK Metcalf, at least that's what the agent's going to say. Now, from the team, I'm looking at it, well, DK Metcalf, although the productivity lags a little behind, he has some rare traits. The guy is 6'3", 240, a physical freak in nature, great speed. So I would be using that to try to depress where this is going to go if I'm the Commanders, besides the age.
Yeah, I mean, I get into this all the time with my listeners. I love Terry. Terry's a true number one receiver, but it's a position that is so packed with star receivers. Chase and Jefferson are in a different class. I mean, if you want to throw, A.J. Brown into that conversation, go ahead. Metcalf, kind of like A.J. Brown, is, a big, strong guy that we've seen dominate games at times. That's not necessarily Terry. So, the age, and then it's like, where is he? Is he around 10? Is he plus or minus 10? Is he the 8th best receiver? Is he the 12th best receiver? And then you get into age, and then you look at the contracts, and I think there's, some trickiness to it. But you think it gets done, and you think ultimately it looks like at the, very end of this, how many years, what gets guaranteed, and what's the average salary?
Well, I don't think there's a deal that's under $30 million per year, because the question I would ask, hoping if I didn't get the answer I wanted, there'd be a problem. Since Adam Peters came from the 49ers, he knows what Brandon Ayuk can and can't do.
Yep.
So my question would be, who would you rather have, my guy or Ayuk? If he says Ayuk, we got a problem. But it's going to be, I say it's going to be north of 30. I don't think it quite gets, it's not going to get to CeeDee Lamb 34, which I don't think so.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter how many years you do, because this is not going to be, he's not going to sign another contract. At least a big money one. This is his last big one. But here's one other thing you have to keep in mind. The Commanders cannot really stick a franchise tag on him next year. It's going to be too cost prohibitive because of the way the 120% of prior year salary works. When you say prior year salary, that's really salary cap number with a couple of minor adjustments. Now, you can't pin down the exact amount of what his tag is going to be, because he has that $250,000 Pro Bowl incentive, which will get added back in after the calculations if he's a Pro Bowler again, so it'd be likely to be earned. But the way the calculations work, it's going to at least be $30.2 million. Could be $30.45 million, and then to franchise him a second time, you're talking slightly over $36 million. So you wouldn't franchise him. Hypothetically, let's say you did it in 2026. You wouldn't do it in 2027 because another 20%.
Right.
So he has a little bit of leverage from the standpoint. You got to get something done with him. Also, you're in win now mode. You have a cheap quarterback you don't have to pay for a couple of years. So if you actually have to overpay a little bit for your most productive skill position player, then so be it. Well, I think the guarantees, it's 60 fully guaranteed at signing for Metcalf. So he's probably going to be looking for that. The last 20 of the guarantees for Metcalf are injury only. Given that CeeDee Lamb is at $67 million fully and $100 total, maybe if you can go to the 60 fully and the 80, which can become fully guaranteed, not just straight injury guaranteed, it might be in that range.
One of the things as you were talking through the franchise tag, the one thing that would be a benefit for the team, and I'm not suggesting that they would go down this path, is just cash outlay. I mean, they're only paying 1 year at a time. They're not guaranteeing. It's not 60 at signing and then another 20 beyond that guaranteed in escrow. And the only reason I bring that up, Joel, not that I really believe this is an issue, but they paid $6 billion and needed 20-plus limited partners to do it less than 2 years ago. They've put nearly $100 million into the existing stadium. They've got a massive expenditure on the stadium that they hope ends up at the RFK site. And in 2 years, when they can pay Jayden Daniels, that's likely to be the biggest contract in NFL history, or at least it's possible. So I was, I'm curious if you gave that any thought, as to whether or not this would be the biggest cash outlay they've given for a player since they took over the team, Terry's contract. I mean, would something like that even be in play in your mind?
Not at over $30 million as a franchise tag, because that would be a lot for a receiver. It's not going to be the formula amount. It's going off his salary or cap number. Because cap number this year is $25.5 million.
Yeah,
there'll be some minor adjustments to that, but I don't know if they want to carry him at 30 next year on the cap. That's the problem.
Yeah, good point.
So that's why I think he's got a little bit of leverage there.
Yep.
Now, one thing you could look at as a way to try to get this thing done is the deal current extension, the 3-year extension, averaged $23.2 million. The cap's gone up 34% since then. So if you adjust this deal for salary cap inflation, you're just a shade over $31 million per year.
Right. So what do you think Jayden's going to get in the, winter, early spring of 2027?
Well, that's kind of hard to predict right now. One, he has to continue to build upon what happened this year. You once had a quarterback who won Rookie of the Year, had injuries, and wasn't the same guy. So I'm going to caution a little bit until I see year two. One, I want to see there's a guy down, not too far down the road. I'm curious to see when that contract gets done. He's another dual threat quarterback.
Lamar Jackson.
Yes. And CJ Stroud, if he kind of took a slight step backwards last year from his rookie year. He has been to the playoffs 2 straight years. So another strong year. The Texans aren't afraid to pay top dollar. So I don't know where that one comes in. A guy that depends on where CJ Stroud, how he plays next year. But if that Derek Stingley Jr. contract is the indication, the new money is $30 million per year, which dramatically reset the cornerback market, then you could have a 7 in front is the first digit for Jayden Daniels.
Yeah. So I don't know how closely you follow the entire roster, but who's first in line to get paid next offseason? Because they don't have to pay Jayden until 2027 at the very early. So I don't know how closely you follow the overall roster here, but given that they don't have to pay Jayden until 2027 at the earliest, who's next in line next offseason? Who do you see getting?
Well, first guy that comes to mind, sorry to cut you off, Laramie Tunsil.
Of course,
you brought him in.
That's right.
To be the left tackle, protect Jayden Daniels. That's going to be the guy you have to pay. I'm surprised he hasn't pushed for it this year. Typically, if you give up significant compensation for someone and you don't get the deal done around the time of the trade or not, and there's not a big lag time, you usually end up paying through the nose for that type of guy. Now, the one exception for that has been Russell Wilson. They did the deal 2 years early, and they would have been better off waiting. But you saw in Seattle, more compensation than this Tunsil trade. But with Jamal Adams, they didn't get it done immediately the following offseason. They had to reset the safety market.
Right.
Tunsil, the first time around, wasn't done in conjunction with the trade. And he became the first $20 million per year offensive lineman. That put him in position to be the first $25 million per year offensive lineman. So you probably want to get deals done when you give up significant compensation. They gave a lot more for him to go to Miami to Houston than this time around. Nonetheless, still pretty significant. You probably want to get these types of things done sooner rather than later. That's what history shows us.
What are your thoughts overall on Washington entering year 2 of Jayden Daniels after their best season in over 30 years last year?
Well, you're doing what you should do when you found the quarterback and he's cheap. This is your window. So you are in win now mode, because once he becomes expensive, you can't pay everybody, and it gets a lot harder to sustain success. The Texans went all in after C.J. Stroud's rookie year in terms of bringing people in, doing extensions. So, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I just kind of jokingly thought we were going to see the Bobby Beathard, George Allen type thing. I'm going way back where you give away all your first round picks for the next 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite get to that point. But nonetheless, you bring in Lattimore to show up and need a corner during the middle of last year. I'm giving him a mulligan because of the hamstring injuries that we'll see more of what we thought he would be this upcoming season. You've got Tunsil coming in. You bring back some of the seasoned veterans who played at a very high level. Debo on the trade. Yeah, it's now or never, but you'll still have an extended window if Jayden Daniels is who we think he is going to be on a go-forward basis, because that's the hardest piece to find, the quarterback.
Thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it, Joel. Take care, and hopefully you're right and the Terry deal gets done before camp.
Thanks for having me.
Joel Corey, everybody. This thing's going to get done. I keep saying that. What if it doesn't? So what? They'll play 1 year and then they'll get a deal done at some point during the year or afterwards. You don't want to go down that franchise tag path with him in 2026. You don't want that. Albert Breer, I don't know what he was on recently. Maybe it was one of those SI.com things. But he did say there's still a lot of work to do on the Terry McLaurin contract extension. But he said, quote, I'd expect that work will pick up again when the league comes back from break in a few weeks, but it's still not in a great place. We'll see what happens. There's plenty of time to get something done. I mean, people have picked up on that line. It's still not in a great place. It never is until it's actually done. Deadlines make deals, and let's not forget the historical sort of, the history of the 49ers with contracts like this, which is where Adam Peters came from. They tend to get done later, not earlier. Not cowboy late, but later. And they tend to drag out. And, there are many in the, business that feel like time typically works for them. We'll see. It doesn't always work that way. But I expect a deal to get done. I can't imagine Terry playing on a 1-year deal. Saquon Barkley once again took a jab at division foes, including Washington. We'll tell you what he said over the weekend when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app.
All right, well, we have a trade, and unlike last hour, we got a lot more details here. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sending Minkah Fitzpatrick and a 2027 fifth-round pick to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and a 2027 seventh-round pick. The WNBA is expected to expand. They have announced via the AP they are expanding to 3 new cities, Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia, over the next 5 years, giving the league a total of 18 teams. EA Sports has announced, or teased rather, that they are reviving their hit NCAA basketball video game series that was retired in 2010. And the Nats have announced AARP as their new jersey patch sponsor. Speaking of the Nats, they went in extras last night by a score of 7-4. Jacob Young tied the game with an RBI single in the top of the 9th, and James Wood had a historic day at the plate. He became the first player to be intentionally walked 4 times in a game since Barry Bonds. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Yeah, so the NHL draft was over the weekend. The Caps selected 5 players. Their first round selection at number 27 overall was left winger Lyndon Lakovic. And then they picked other players. We're not doing a draft breakdown. That's not why I'm doing this. What do you got right now? But they drafted 5 players. But here's something that may be interesting to some. In the second round of the NHL draft over the weekend, the Carolina Hurricanes selected, with the 49th overall selection, a center from Penn State. His name, Charlie Serrato, the son of Vinny Serrato. We had Vinny on the show not that long ago, a few months back, and Vinny spent the first 10 minutes talking to me about Charlie and what a really good player he was at Penn State, and the fact that, there was a chance he would get drafted and maybe even high, and he did get picked in the second round. And Vinny's told me stories before on the air about when he was working with the Skins, and he'd be up super early. Hockey parents, bless their hearts, because typically ice time is very early in the morning, especially when the kids are younger. And I don't remember exactly what time, but I think Vinny said, oh yeah, I'd be up. I'd take him to the to practice at 5 a.m. Then he'd get done. Then I'd, take him home, get him breakfast, take him to school, and then go into work. Charlie Serrato. Congratulations to Charlie Serrato, Vinny's son, drafted by the Carolina Hurricanes in the second overall round of the draft. Good for him. I think, and I could be wrong about this, who's the general manager for the Carolina Hurricanes? I know you're not going to know without looking it up, so I will look it up real quickly.
Yeah,
is it George McPhee?
No, it's Eric Tulsky. McPhee was the GM of the Golden Knights. I think he still is, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay,
because I do remember Vinny telling me that he was friendly with George McPhee when McPhee was the GM. Was there overlap there? I guess there must have been.
I think a little
at
bit.
Some point. Yeah. All right, there you go. Charlie Serrato. Good luck to him in Carolina, Vinny's son. So Saquon Barkley was doing some celebrity softball event for Devontae Smith's charity over the weekend, and somebody asked him why he plays so hard against division teams, especially the Cowboys and the Commanders. And somebody said, did either one of those teams reach out? Did the Commanders reach out to you when you were a free agent? And he said, quote, nah, never heard a word from Commanders or Dallas. That's why it's BTA when I see them, closed quote. For those of you not in the know, and you can put me into that category, BTA is an acronym that stands for Belt to ASS. Okay. I mean, Saquon Barkley being available, period, was a surprise to everybody last year. Why would Washington, in a year in which they are transforming their roster, they're not expecting legitimately, remember, recalibration. I don't talk about rebuild, Dan Quinn said. It's not a word that's in our vocabulary. Recalibration. Recalibration was, we got to get a handle on what we have here, because it doesn't appear as if we have very much. And, oh, by the way, we're going to have a rookie quarterback, on a rookie deal, but we got to ease him into it with the coordinator. And they were sure. They were very positive on Jayden. But Washington was not in the spend big business in year one with a new head coach and a new general manager. And I think that was wise to come in year one and start spending big money. First of all, why would Saquon Barkley have taken Washington over Philadelphia? I mean, the answer back to Saquon, this is like the second time he's taken this kind of shot at what, look, all these players are always looking for slights. They're always looking to be disrespected so that they can figure out a way to motivate themselves, and bless them for doing it that way. Whatever works. I'm not knocking it at all. But it's the second time he's kind of taken a shot at Washington. What was the first shot? Remember, it was not that long ago. Max, do you remember specifically what it was? It wasn't about not being sought after when he was a free agent. It was something else.
I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment.
See if you can find it. Barkley taking a shot at Commanders from like a month ago. It was on a podcast. We played it, and I can't remember specifically what it was. No. But, I mean, Washington wasn't going to be interested in Saquon Barkley. The Cowboys would be the team that should have been interested. They've had a running back issue, although Rico Dowdle played well, not Saquon Barkley. But Washington wasn't going to be interested. And by the way, if Washington had been interested, Saquon Barkley wasn't going to be interested in coming to Washington, a team that was completely gutting and flipping their roster. And there was, an over-under on wins last year of 5.5. There was nothing expected.
Oh,
he had
I remember what the Saquon thing was. It was he said the Eagles team that he was on was like one of the best of all time.
Oh, yeah. He said top 5 team of all time, which is embarrassing to say. They had a top 5, maybe top 2 or 3 defensive performance in the Super Bowl. There's no question about that. But you can't be an all-time top 5 NFL team when you don't even end up with the 1 seed in your conference. They ended up the 2 seed behind Detroit. They won 14 games, 13 games, whatever it was. I think when we talked this through, that the Eagles team last year, they're pushing top 20, top 25 teams of all time. And a lot of that, really is because of the recent, performance, the most recent performance, which was just a flat out defensive dominant performance over the Kansas City Chiefs. But there was another shot I thought he took at Washington specifically, but that I do remember that one, but that wasn't a shot at Washington. I thought he took another shot at Washington at some point. If you guys remember what it was, at Kevin Sheehan, DC on Twitter. But he would have never, if Washington had expressed interest in Saquon Barkley, he would have laughed. He would have laughed at Washington. He would have never come here. He was looking to get to a contender. And the Eagles stepped up and they were willing to pay too. And Washington wasn't in position. They weren't going to pay that kind of money to a running back. They didn't even know what they had up front. They didn't know what they had anywhere, including a quarterback, even though they were very optimistic. Little, if you use that as motivation, there's nothing wrong with it. Talking about it makes you look a little bit silly. He had a great year, though. He had one phenomenal year. By the way, and we're going to get to this next hour. Ben's going to join us in about 8 minutes, and Ben's got some news related to his career, which we will talk about a little bit as well. But the guy, Jimmy Kempski, who put out the lists of top 10 reasons why Washington might be a dumpster fire in 2025, did it with the Eagles as well, his own team. And I thought some of the reasoning there and some of the research was interesting. So I'll share some of that with you as well next hour. I do want to mention that Window Nation's got a great deal going on right now. Window Nation, first of all, the heat wave that we just went through, it probably won't be the last of the summer. And if you've got older windows, you're really spending too much on air conditioning on those very hot days. Window Nation can give you the best insulated windows in the business and keep your home cool during the blistering summer days. Their windows are specifically built to withstand the sun's heat and improve your home's energy efficiency. Window Nation has some of the best energy efficient windows out there. Replace your windows today to keep your home cool and comfortable all summer long. Their installation crews will get it done in a day or less. You'll be back to your normal routine with minimal interruption. They'll leave your home looking better than when they arrived. Their installation crews average 16 years of experience. You can trust Window Nation to install your windows right the first time. Window Nation offers a lifetime warranty on all their windows, so you can relax knowing your home's protected far into the future. Save big this month. 50% off on all window styles with 0 interest charged for 5 years. No interest until the year 2030. Hurry, this sale ends soon. Don't miss out. This is Window Nation's best sale of the year. Schedule a fast, free home estimate right now with the pros at Window Nation by calling them at 866-90NATION or going to windownation.com. Real quickly before we get to Ben. So, I don't know if I've talked to you about this show or not. Have you watched Landman?
No,
Max?
I have not. Enlighten me.
Okay. I think I mentioned Friends and Neighbors, Your Friends and Neighbors with John Hamm a few weeks ago, which was just spectacular. So Landman's been recommended to me, I don't know how many times over the last 5-6 months. I am 6 episodes through the 10-episode first season. Billy Bob Thornton, I mean, look, he's great in everything he's always done. Going back to Sling Blade, I think Fargo is one of the best things he's ever done. But this is up there, man. Billy Bob Thornton playing Tommy Norris in Landman on Paramount. I think that's where I'm watching it, on Paramount Plus. Is so good. This is the story of the oil fields in Texas, West Texas, where the people that work the oil fields are called roughnecks. And, you're talking about, it's a boom bust industry always. And Tommy Norris is the general manager of kind of an independent oil company. And it is so good. John Hamm's in it. Ali Larter's in it. Gentlemen, that alone is worth the watch. Demi Moore's in it, although she, at this point through 6 episodes, does not play a major role. But Billy Bob Thornton playing Tommy Norris, this general manager of an independent oil petroleum company in West Texas, is so good. There are laugh out loud moments, and at the same time, it's mixed in with kind of a little bit of a Breaking Bad feel to it at times. Highly recommend Landman, and I'm not even done with it. I can tell you tonight I will probably wrap it up. That's the plan tonight. Do we have any sports on tonight worth watching? I don't think so.
No, Nats are off tonight, so yeah, nothing really pressing.
Yeah, tonight when I get home, I think that's the plan. If you've been watching Landman and you've recommended it to me, because I've had many of you recommend that to me over the last several months, you were 100% right. It does have a little bit too sort of an Aaron Sorkin dialogue, a bit too quick, a bit too pithy, a bit too like almost unrealistic, but it's really good. Really, really good. And I guess a season 2 is on the way. God, Billy Bob Thornton can act, man. If you've never seen Fargo season 1, he's brilliant in that. All right, Ben Standig next. All right, joining us right now, as he does every Monday and Friday, and he will continue to do, is our good friend Ben Standig. Ben has a podcast called Last Man Standing, which is excellent. Ben covers the team, and he's going to continue to cover the team despite some bad news career-wise, but just a short, interim step back because Ben is talented. But I'll let him tell you what the news is. I've known for a while when Ben and I have been talking about this, and I'm sure he has with other people as well. But he did put it out on Twitter. And go ahead. Tell everybody what's going on.
Kevin, appreciate all that. Yeah, no, I found out recently that the Athletic wasn't going to renew my contract after 6 years. So obviously a bummer. Enjoyed my time there, but I've had time to process it. So moved on. All good. Figure out what's to come. And I mean, look, you're not guaranteed these jobs, so I was fortunate to have it for as long as I did. And the bosses get to make the decisions, just like Adam Peters and Dan Quinn do. So gotta respect that, and that's all I can do. But yeah, like you said, nothing. The rest of it will stay the same. Podcast keeps going. You're letting me still stay on here, so yeah.
I'm not letting you. You've earned it on, and the station wants you to stay on. Look, you and I have talked about this, but I'll net it out. Ben is really good at what he does, and over the last several years, I wouldn't have him on twice a week, especially during football season, if I didn't think he was really good. And I think he's done a phenomenal job covering the team. And I think the Athletics losing big time by moving on from this after 6 years. It's a rough business. All these businesses, post-pandemic in particular, haven't been, this has happened to so many in the industry. But this one, when it comes down to, and I can't speak to anything, with respect to their situation, but when it comes down to talent and interest level in Ben's writing on the Athletic and his covering of the team, it's second to none. And you can tell that in the responses to Ben's tweet today about his career at the Athletic coming to an end. But you will move on. You're going to continue to cover the team. You'll have a podcast, and I am assuming you'll end up writing somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple options about that. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do next, and hopefully some other opportunities will come out. But yeah, no, we'll keep it going one way or the other for sure. I got to get my thoughts out there somewhere, or I'm just going to go crazy. So yeah. We'll work out eventually. Yeah, you'll be able to read my work as well as listen to it on the podcast and here. So yeah, all good. We'll figure it out.
Their loss, but we're not losing you. We're still going to have you, and you will land on your feet. You've always done that throughout your career, and by the way, have always not only landed on your feet, but gotten better with each stop, each successive stop. You've gotten better. All right, well, we're here for you when we need you. I'm kidding, and we're rooting for you big time. So
I
real quickly,
all that, Kevin, thank you.
Real quickly, did you see what Saquon Barkley said? These players are always into creating slights and creating reasons to be motivated, but he's like Washington didn't show any interest in me in preseason. That's why they're getting the BTA, belt to backside. First of all, is there any chance, had Washington been interested in Saquon Barkley last year, that he would have come to Washington?
I mean, I can't imagine it. I mean, look, obviously Saquon Barkley is a tremendous player. He had an unbelievable season, and he definitely torched this team. It would have made zero sense at the point of what we thought we knew about this team coming off a 4-win season to sign a running back of all positions for, decent enough money. That's just
all-time money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the extra, piece when you like it was for the Eagles, who a team that had never historically invested in running backs decided that I think they decided that they have to give Jalen Hurts a lot more help. He can't just sort of carry this thing. it would, yeah, I don't buy that he would have come to Washington, and I certainly don't think it would have made sense for Washington. Again, hindsight is, all that. If we had known that Jayden Daniels would have the year that he had and everything would go the way it did, sure, having Saquon Barkley would be great. But at the point, it didn't make any sense for where this team was at. And again, and from his perspective as well, like, well, if the choice is Philly or Washington, I don't know why he would have picked Washington, considering Philly was much closer to a title contention.
Of course. And Philly offered him the largest contract in the history of the league at running back because they were so close to a title and felt like he was certainly, a missing piece, if not the missing piece. Like, that's one of those, it's like, dude, do whatever you need to do to motivate yourself. But when you go public with something like that, you just sound stupid. Because our team wasn't ever going to offer you that because we were in total recalibration mode, and you would have never even considered it. Never. I mean, zero chance you would have considered Washington last year unless they doubled the money that Philadelphia paid you. We talked about something earlier in the show. I don't know if you saw this, but Pro Football Focus basically did with the 6 quarterbacks that were taken in last year's draft, 2024 draft, in the top 12, a ceiling and a floor for those quarterbacks. And I turned it into basically, Jayden Daniels, after 1 year, what do we think his career comp ceiling is? And what do we think his career comp floor is? Now, they used current players, Lamar Jackson being the ceiling, Kyler Murray being the floor. I went with Steve Young as the ceiling. I've always felt like stylistically that Jayden is like Steve Young 2.0, but even more explosive, even more athletic, and by the way, taller. And I went with the floor as Michael Vick. I didn't prepare you for this. So if you need more time, I can give it to you and we can move on to something else. But does something come to mind right away? A ceiling comp and a floor comp for Jayden Daniels?
Well, from the ceiling perspective, I swear when you said that, the first name that came to my mind was Steve Young. Randall Cunningham, there's some of that, but Randall Cunningham, ultimately his career was not as,
that's right.
He didn't reach the heights that we think Jayden can. And Steve Young's mobility, there's an all-time run by Steve Young. If you go, you can find it online.
Stumbling, bumbling run. Yeah.
Yeah. It was an all-timer. He was incredibly accurate, could get the ball down the field. The Super Bowl win over the Chargers is easily one of the biggest one-sided games ever. So no, I like that one a lot. The floor, Michael Vick's a pretty good one. I don't know, maybe that's an accurate one. Michael Vick obviously had some fantastic years. Obviously his career got interrupted by some off the field stuff. So I don't think that's a bad one for sure. Like I said, sometimes I have to say to myself, okay, am I going overboard with this? I know. Things happen. People go backwards sometimes, or, life doesn't work out the way you think. And I just can't figure out a scenario, again, knock on wood, barring injury, where this happens here because of just what he showed last year. And if it was just about the physical tools, then, okay, maybe maybe you have a little more question about is it sustainable over time, but it isn't. He's a football nerd. He really, studies this stuff, works at it all the time. And, the demeanor, as we saw last year, just insanely calm and poised at all times for a guy who was his first year in the league. You think that's only going to get better. So yeah, I think yours are pretty accurate. Like Lamar, I get it, but I don't know. I'm not the biggest Lamar guy. He's obviously a hell of a player, but look, Jayden has already in one postseason has impressed me more than whatever Lamar has done. So in the postseason, in the postseason, yeah. So yeah, no, I think the ones you said are pretty good.
Yeah, when you said sometimes you almost have to take a step back and say, hold on, am I getting way ahead of myself? And I do that with him all the time. But if we're talking about ceiling, when I threw out Steve Young, because I've always just felt like, man, Steve Young if he plays, from his mid-20s on in San Francisco with Bill Walsh and Jerry Rice and John Taylor, and that whole gang, I mean, he's got more than 2 MVPs. He's probably got 4 MVPs and more Super Bowls. I've always felt like Steve Young is a top 10 quarterback of all time, and he's not always listed that way. He is occasionally. But I thought to myself, is his ceiling, Jayden's ceiling, higher than Steve Young's? Is it Patrick Mahomes? Is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it, is it actually, I mean, this is nuts, but is it one of the 2 or 3 greatest of all time? I mean, what we saw from him as a rookie, if I told you, in 10 years from now, he's going to be a 2-time Super Bowl winner, a 3-time MVP, and already a lock first ballot Hall of Famer. You wouldn't immediately push back on that.
No. I mean, I think to the point of like, it is only 1 year is probably why I would say like I can't go much higher than Steve Young as an upside right now, because to say Rodgers or Brady or any of that's just, that's just a bridge too far based off of 1 year. But certainly, if he keeps this up, then that's a whole other story. And by the way, on the Steve Young part, sometimes I would play this game in my head. If we did a draft of all, for 32 teams, all-time players, like in the Super Bowl era at least, or maybe since like 1980, whatever, I have always thought to myself, I would let all the other people jump on quarterbacks immediately because that's what would happen, and I would take Steve Young later. That's always been my plan in a hypothetical game that will never happen. So yeah, I have high respect for Steve Young, and I think that's Steve Young's career would have been even significantly better if he hadn't been stuck behind Joe Montana for a while. So yeah, Steve Young is a pretty good one.
Yeah, I didn't know that you felt the same way. I've always felt that way about Steve Young. I've always felt like in the conversation of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, because he really didn't get started until 31 years old, after Montana had gone to Kansas City. But still there was a 4-year period there where he was ridiculous. And he was in that moment the greatest dual threat quarterback of all time. And they weren't even allowing him to play dual threat football, meaning designed runs and option runs. They didn't have that. I shouldn't say design. There were quarterback draws. There were, but there was no option. There was no zone read in the game back then. Imagine what a great zone read quarterback he would have been. But then as a thrower, he was great. Here were the 2 differences between Jayden and Steve Young, I said. Number one is Steve Young was not a tall quarterback. Like he was, I'm looking at it right now, 6'1". Yeah, he was shorter than Jayden. And number 2, as explosive a runner and playmaker as he was for that time, Jayden's still much more explosive than Steve Young ever was. But in terms of throwing the football, Steve Young threw it so well. And, a lot of West Coast, obviously, with Walsh, but quick release, quick read, threw with anticipation. Remember the throw that beat the Packers in the playoff game to Terrell Owens? He's a 2-time MVP, first ballot Hall of Famer, and both of his MVPs were in his 30s. I mean, he also had Jerry Rice and then Terrell Owens. Like he had some great players around him, and not Walsh for the entire time, obviously. Seifert took over, and Mike Shanahan was his offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl year when he threw 6 touchdowns to beat the Chargers. Steve Young often gives Mike Shanahan as much credit for his career as Bill Walsh. He has said that many times. But anyway.
Yeah, having Jerry Rice helps. Ricky Waters at running back, he was great.
Yeah.
So right, and that's the thing with Jayden. Last year wasn't just his first year; it was the first year of building up this team. And other than Terry McLaurin, as we know, they didn't have too many established pieces established here at least. And, a lot of, dart throws, and some of it worked out. So in theory, it should only get better going forward as they, draft more players, add more pieces, et cetera.
The other thing I pointed out about Young, remember the concussion issue he had. He got concussions many, many times during an era in which, roll Steve around. He'll be all right. We can put him back into the game. Certainly next week he can play. And towards the end of his career, even though he was making Pro Bowls, he was not the same player that he had been 3 or 4 years earlier, even though he was still playing at a ridiculously high level. Anyway, so I guess Albert Breer over the weekend had another comment about the Terry McLaurin contract situation. He was answering, I guess, a mailbag question, and he said, there's a lot of work to do. I'd expect that work will pick up when the league comes back from break in a few weeks, but it is still not in a great place. So we'll see what happens. There's plenty of time to get something done. I know this is repetitive. I know that we talk about this, and we will until the deal gets done. But any change in your level of concern about a deal getting done before the season starts or before camp starts compared to the last time, because your concern level's been where mine has been, which is not that concerned.
Yeah, I don't think I've changed much. Here's what I would say as, a new report. As you said, Albert Breer said something, and I'm sure there'll be others in the next, few days. Other people put out content. I think to a degree, this is right now just an echo chamber. As we know, or, as I'll say, the team is not talking as far as I know. Like, there's been very little coming out about the team's perspective. It's obvious based on some of the previous tweets that people are talking to, Terry McLaurin's agent or people on McLaurin's side of things, which is, fine. But everything is still therefore coming from that angle. And that angle is pessimistic either for real or pessimistic because, that's how they help, get what they want out of it, right? So I don't know that anything has changed. And I think, again, it may be ultimately proved to be, they are super far apart. But I need to see a lot more before I start getting overly concerned. We may not, everybody's also sort of on vacation. I mean, not that, not that you can't negotiate from wherever you are, but, people are stepping away and they're still, as every day goes by, I know people are getting a little more anxious. I have like random friends and others texting me all the time, what's going on? They're going to fix this thing. And I'm always like, all right, just calm down. Let's see. So, again, we get to close to training camp and nothing's done. Then I might start getting a bit more concerned. But for now, I just think that everybody is kind of going with the same information. And, when the team starts to either say something publicly or start getting a message out privately, then we'll have a better feel for where this really is.
Yeah. All right. I want to switch subjects with you. Did you read the Rich Paul statement on LeBron picking up his player option?
I did not. I've been out of town last 20 or 36 hours, so I've kind of missed it. So what happened?
NBA free agency starts later today, tomorrow, something like that. So LeBron James picked up his $52.6 million player option with the Lakers for next season. Now, typically, and I read that come across the crawl, I guess I forget when, last night or whatever, and I'm like, he's staying with the Lakers. And then here's the statement from his agent, manager, whatever, guru, Rich Paul. LeBron knows the Lakers are building for the future, and he also wants to compete for championships. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. We're very appreciative of the partnership we've had for 8 years. By the way, I couldn't believe that he had been with the Lakers for 8 years. But I guess he did leave after the 2016 title, right? In Cleveland? He must have.
I heard the other day that this stint he's been longer with any team in one stint. This is the longest he's ever been.
Wow.
Cleveland more in terms of total years, but in one.
I think the pandemic, those years just threw a lot of things out of whack for for all of us. But he finishes up, Rich Paul does, by saying, we're very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeannie and Rob, Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka, and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. What is that? If he wanted to leave, why did he pick up the player option? Why didn't he just become a free agent?
Right. Well, I mean, look, LeBron, we always have the conversations about the GOAT and this, that, and the other. Like, I've always dinged LeBron because even though there's a perception of him being, this great team player or whatever, that things always go sour whenever he at wherever he is. And, it's about him. And look, I'm not saying that he's the only self-interested athlete out there, but obviously not. But with him, it's very obvious. And his agent is making it even more obvious with that kind of a statement. But by the way, last time I checked, the Lakers were the 3rd seed last year, and they didn't get Luka Doncic until late into the season. And also, look, they never had a center all year. Like, so, I don't know if they're going to sign DeAndre Ayton now that he's a free agent or what they're going to do. But, I mean, do I think that the Lakers are positioned to beat the Thunder or the Rockets, or if Denver gets some help? Yeah, maybe not. But at the same time, it's not like they're that far away. And again, he just added Luka Doncic before he barely played with the guy. So you would think if your really goal is to win, like where is he? If that's your goal, well, where are you going? You're not going to OKC. You're not going to Houston. They just got Kevin Durant. Look in the East. I mean, ironically, if he went back to Cleveland again, that might be his best chance because Cleveland is arguably going to be the best team in the conference after the regular season that they had and all the other teams.
That's what injuries. I was thinking. But somebody mentioned, I think it was Windhorst this morning, mentioned that since he picked up his player option, the Cavs would have to trade between 4 and 6 players to make that happen. I guess the Lakers could waive him, but why would they do that? Like, to me, it's like, LeBron, you just picked up the player option. You're going to be playing for us in 2025. When you picked up the player option, it was with us. It wasn't with another team. It wasn't with a promise that we're going to trade you with this player option. Who wants to trade for LeBron with a $53 million one-year deal? Seriously.
Yeah. Well, also, I think this is like a way to shot across the bow of the Lakers to say, hey, what are we doing? We got to get more help, which of course I assume that they recognize that. And I don't think they're going to go into the season again with nothing at center. They tried to get Mark Williams last year, and for whatever the reason, he failed the physical. So that went away. And, I think they'll, I presume the Lakers will figure out ways to add some help. But yeah, look, if the goal was to really win a title, if that's the number one goal, I'm not saying anybody should give up the money. $53 million is a lot, even for a guy like LeBron who's made tons of money. But yeah, you could have opted out and then gone ahead and, I don't know what Denver's situation is exactly, or Cleveland, but you could have figured out a deal with them where I'm sure you're making like sort of the Aaron Rodgers situation. Like Aaron Rodgers didn't ask for the moon. He's like, all right, give me $20 million. I'll live off of that. He didn't say, give me, make me, the highest paid quarterback or anything like that. So he could have gone down that route too. But, again, when you're used to the world bending the knee to you, then you make these kind of plays because you just think it's going to work out. And then, in fairness to him, it largely has. Don't get me started on all of that, but so I think that's what he's doing. It just whatever.
I mean, one thing is if he ends up moving on, I mean, watch him. He'll work Bronny into the trade to come with him, which will be annoying. Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was a weird story. I mean, he has a no trade clause too, so it's like he gets to dictate everything by signing that player deal. But it's just weird to see somebody pick up a player option and then talk in terms of, thanks, this has been quite a run. You guys have been great to me. Now let's figure out a trade to send me to a real contender. And remember, those standings, remember how bunched up they were at the end. I mean, they were the 3rd seed, but they could have easily been like the 7th or the 8th seed. It was pretty close. And they were never, ever.
They only got Luka at the end, and Luka obviously was going through whatever he was going through. It appears he's in better shape already. We'll see. So, I would think that adding Luka Doncic from the start of the season is a pretty a pretty good addition. Where are you going? And this is again, I think that one reason why things always seem to end badly where he is because he makes statements like this that makes it clear it's him above all. You mentioned Bronny. I feel bad for the kid, but that was just another example of it's LeBron over the team. So we see this over and over and over again over his career. People want to pretend that's not the case, but it is, and this is just another example.
I mean, free agency starts at 6 p.m. today. The Wizards have to sign a big man, don't they? Don't they need? I mean, maybe they don't. I mean, the goal isn't to win, but they don't. Do they even have any sort of defensive big on the roster? I don't think so.
They added Kelly Olynyk in the Jordan Poole trade.
Yeah.
Kelly Olynyk's still a pretty productive big man. I mean, not like not thinking he's Mutombo, but he's a pretty productive guy. He's the kind of guy. In fact, if I was a team, a contending team, who I would look to want to get, maybe it's at the deadline. So there's that, and Alex Sarr as well. But their team is loaded at wing and guard. They need to get bigger bodies. I mean, at some point, I'm imagining they trade one, if not two, from the group of C.J. McCollum, Marcus Smart, and Chris Middleton. I think Middleton's probably the least likely just based on his contract and injury history. But, you trade one or two of those guys, and obviously the goal is to get picks out of it. But maybe there's a way to get another big man out of it. They also have Rashawn Holmes, who, he exists and, whatever. He played in the league. But, in theory, you'd like to see them get another big. But, look, small ball is obviously a thing. They could, if Keyshawn George has some size, maybe they play him more at the 4. You go crazy with some of these really, wingy lineups, and maybe Koulibaly's up there. But I would agree with you. In general, just for functional basketball, I think they need at least another big.
All right. Keep me posted, of course, and best to you. Ben's been phenomenal, and I think many of you feel the same way. The Athletic is going to miss him big time. Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Kevin, you rock. I always appreciate it. Thanks to everyone out there as well. And we'll talk soon. See ya.
All right. Ben Standig, everybody. So remember that list of 10 reasons the Commanders would be a dumpster fire that we read through last week? The same writer wrote the same list, not the same list, but came up with a list of why the Eagles would be a dumpster fire. More on that next. We found something else Saquon Barkley said from over the weekend about Washington. We will play that for you a little bit later on this hour. So the guy from PhillyVoice.com, Jimmy Kempski is his name. He came up with 4 columns, all titled 10 Reasons the fill-in-the-blank NFC East team, Commanders, Giants, Cowboys, Eagles, will be a dumpster fire this season. We went through his list as to why he felt like Washington might be a dumpster fire this season. And the reasons weren't crazy. Like, we've talked about some of those reasons. Not that they would lead to dumpster fire of a season. There's one way, and I know some of you are super bullish on Marcus Mariota, and I like the way he played last year, and I've always liked Marcus Mariota. But, that's a 6-11, 7-10 type of season if he has to play the majority of games. God forbid Jayden doesn't get hurt. But anyway, there were a couple of reasons that were interesting. Run defense was a big reason. Just the typical, when you improve as much from one year to the next, typically that next year is a step back. Not a dumpster fire step back, but a step back. Anyway, we went through that last week. We're not going to touch that today. Jimmy Kempski on Friday came out with 10 reasons the Eagles will be a dumpster fire in 2025. So there's some pretty good research that old Jimmy does. By the way, we talked a little bit about this, I don't know, within the last month, where we talked about, why the Eagles might take a step back. And it had nothing, for me, it doesn't have anything to do with the history of the NFC East. Like, they can't win the division because nobody's done it in the last 21 years, repeated. I mean, every year's a new year. Philly's really good. Their roster is excellent. But I talked about Saquon Barkley's injury proneness, missing a lot of games, in New York. Didn't miss any last year except for the last game when he sat out after Philly had everything clinched. But listen to the very first reason that Jimmy Kempski, PhillyVoice.com, writes why the Eagles could be a dumpster fire this season. Number one, the Eagles put a lot of mileage on Saquon Barkley. Including the playoffs, Saquon Barkley got an astronomical 482 touches in 2024. That was the third highest number of touches in a single season this century since 2000. There have been 17 players who have had 430 or more touches in a single season during that span. And then he makes a list of those players to show how after that very heavy load season, they fell off the following season. So there's this list of 17 players. And you've got most of those players, all right, most of the 17 basically had a major drop-off, or at least a drop-off in yards per carry the next season. DeMarco Murray, in this century, nobody had more touches than DeMarco Murray had for the Cowboys in 2014. 497 touches. He averaged 4.7 yards per carry in 2014. It dropped to 3.6 yards per carry the next season. Eddie George in 2000 with the Titans, 488 touches. He went from 3.7 yards per carry to 3.0 yards per carry. So then Barkley comes in at 482 touches. Now, we don't know what next year will be, but we know what this year was. Saquon Barkley's average yards per carry, 5.8 yards per carry. Pretty impressive, 5.8 yards per carry. In fact, on this list, only 2 running backs during their heavy load seasons averaged more than 5 yards per carry. Amon Green averaged 5.3 yards per carry in 2003. at 461 touches. And then Sean Alexander in his MVP season 2005 with the Seahawks averaged 5.1 yards. But here's the takeaway. Of the 17 players, only 3 ended up increasing their yards per carry from the heavy load to the next season. Those 3 were, hold on, where are they? Arian Foster went from 4.1 yards to 4.5 yards. LaDainian Tomlinson in 2002 went from 4.5 to 5.3. And then Edgerrin James in 2003 went from 4.1 to 4.6. Every other running back either went down and went down significantly, like, on average about 0.8 of a yard or greater, or they ended up with the same number of yards, or they got injured or retired. Ricky Williams retired after 2003, after a heavy load season. So reason number 1, I thought this was interesting research, though. When you touch the ball that many times in a season, it's hard to follow it up with a better season or even an equal season. Reason number 2, they also put a lot of mileage on Jalen Carter. So basically what they're saying is their 2 best players on offense and defense, Saquon Barkley and Jalen Carter, were played to the point of exhaustion and played to the point in which more times than not, the follow-up season is less than the heavy load season. So Jalen Carter last year played the second most snaps in the NFL for an interior defensive lineman. Only Zach Allen in Denver had more. He was awesome. He really was. Jalen Carter is one of those true difference makers. And remember, a lot of those snaps, he was just often taking up double teams, for guys like Jordan Davis and Milton Williams and some of the other players up front. Number 3, the number 3 reason the Eagles will turn into a dumpster fire in 2025. And to me, this is reason number 2 after Saquon's heavy load and Saquon's propensity to get injured, which he did not last year. Reason number 3 is the Eagles said goodbye to a lot of their significant contributors last year. Not that they didn't have a lot of depth, not that they didn't go out in free agency and in the draft and perhaps replace those players, but think about the starters. 5 defensive starters at one time or another gone. Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Brandon Graham. All right, they also lost Orrin Burks, their linebacker, who started a few games. Offensively, they lost Mekhi Becton off their offensive line. Those are big losses. Now, their roster is outstanding. They have depth on that roster. They added in the offseason. Also remember that Nakobe Dean missed the last 2 postseason games, and he was having a hell of a year. But they went out and got Ojulari. They went out and got Adoree Jackson on defense. They drafted that kid in the 4th round. They drafted a kid in the 1st round that's coming off the injury from Alabama, Jihad Campbell. And then offensively, they added several offensive linemen, including some draft picks, and they added A.J. Dillon to the backfield. And remember, they also had Will Shipley, who played pretty well when he got the opportunity, including in the NFC Championship game. But, that's one of the reasons you look at the Eagles and you say, if they were to step back in this season, is one of the reasons that they lost a lot of their players, a lot of key contributors. They have a lot of depth, though. They've got players to step in. Remember, their corners were rookies last year, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. They had guys up front who were ready to play who weren't necessarily starters. So we'll see. The next reason Philadelphia becomes a dumpster fire in 2025, they've got a very hard schedule. Yeah, when you're the first place team in a division, you have a hard schedule. But remember, and this is, the point about schedules. Philadelphia's schedule for 14 games is the exact same, 14 out of the 17, as Washington's, Dallas's, and the Giants' schedule. There are only 3 opponents that are different. The Eagles, as an example, play the Bucks, Rams, and Bills. That's different. Those are the 3 games that are different from Washington, Dallas, and the Giants. Washington's 3 games that nobody else has in the NFC East are the Falcons, Seahawks, and Dolphins. So that is a difference, at least on paper. Bucks, Rams, Bills, Falcons, Seahawks, Dolphins. The Cowboys have Panthers, Cardinals, Jets as their 3 games that are different. The Giants have the Saints, 49ers, and Patriots. They may have gotten unlucky with that because the 49ers were in last place in their division because of all the injuries. And then reason number 5, I'm not into this reason. They start slowly. Well, they started slowly last year because they had a bunch of injuries. They went down to Tampa without A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith and got beat badly. So those are the top 5 reasons. There's one other reason on their last 5 that I think makes a lot of sense. We talked about the roster turnover for the Eagles. I think that's an issue. We talked about the heavy workloads for Saquon Barkley and Jalen Carter. Those could be issues. Of the last 5 reasons, there was one that stuck out that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you what that is when we come back, and you'll also hear another shot at Washington by Saquon Barkley. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We also stream the show on the Team 980's YouTube page. When you get there, subscribe and hit the like button.
All right, we have a trade. The Pittsburgh Steelers are sending Minkah Fitzpatrick in a 2027 fifth-round pick to the Miami Dolphins in exchange for Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith and a 2027 seventh-round pick. The WNBA is also expected to expand to 3 new cities, including Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia over the next 5 years, bringing the total teams in the WNBA to a total of 18. EA Sports has announced they're reviving their hit NCAA basketball series that was retired in 2010, and the Nats have also announced that AARP is their new jersey patch sponsor. They also won an extras last night by a score of 7-4 over the LA Angels. Jacob Young tied the game with an RBI single in the top of the 9th. James Wood had a historic day at the plate. He becomes the first player to be intentionally walked 4 times in a game since Barry Bonds. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Saquon Barkley getting injured, and missing games would be a big reason the Eagles end up taking a step back. I mean, using the term dumpster fire is for obvious, getting people sucked into the story. The reasons are good. The research is legit. And I think that that's not unfair. The fact that also Jalen Carter was really used a lot, younger player. But Saquon Barkley's got a history of being injured. But here's a good reason. Jalen Hurts has yet another new offensive coordinator and another new quarterbacks coach. He's entering his number 6 season. He's on his 5th offensive coordinator and his 5th quarterbacks coach in 6 years in Philadelphia. Kellen Moore obviously became the head coach in New Orleans. Kevin Patullo, who's been on the staff in Philadelphia since 2020, was elevated to OC, and Scott Loeffler was elevated to quarterbacks coach. So another new OC. And look, we know that, Shane Steichen was good for Jalen Hurts. Brian Johnson, who's in Washington, probably not as good. Just seemed like the fit wasn't great. Kellen Moore, the fit pretty decent. We don't know what the fit's going to be. I mean, it seems like a continuation of the same, but that's kind of been the case for all of their OCs, since Jalen took over. Number 7 on the list of reasons Philadelphia will be a dumpster fire or have a step back season. I didn't realize this. They were the 2nd healthiest team in the NFL last year. Per man games lost. Will that hold up? I don't know. They did lose Nakobe Dean for the playoffs. As great as their defense was in the postseason, a player who was playing at a very high level for them missed the Washington game. I think he missed the Ram game too. I think he played and got hurt in the first playoff game against Green Bay and then missed the Ram game, the Washington game, and the Kansas City Super Bowl. They did not go out and add a kicker to their roster. And Jake Elliott, who was forever really a guy you could count on, had his worst year last year, 28 of 36. He was a disaster. Remember, he missed a couple of kicks against Washington on that Thursday night game. So they brought him back. And so that's reason number 8. Reason number 9, because the NFC East hasn't seen a repeat winner since 2004. We all know that. And then reason number 10, they're going to get everybody's best. Yeah, that's what happens when you are the Super Bowl champions. And that's also what happens when you've got some guys who run their mouths a little bit in the offseason. Nick Sirianni's always going to run his mouth a little bit. But how about Saquon Barkley? We're a top 5 team of all time. Saquon Barkley. Washington never even showed interest in me. That's why I got, BTA going with them. Belt to ASS. But we found something else that he said over the weekend. What was this on? A podcast?
So the Eagles have this YouTube series that is like Eagles Reacts. So they'll have a player react to something either like Nick Foles reacts to the Eagles winning Super Bowl 52 or Kevin Hart reacts to. Okay. But so Saquon reacted to his record-breaking season. And so this is what he said about the first loss to the Commanders from this year.
The mindset kind of going into this game, too, is the last time we played this team, we lost. We kind of gave the game away. That's why you got to be careful what you do. We remember how they celebrated. If this was college, they would have stormed the field. That's what it felt like. So that definitely was on the back of our mind.
So he was talking about the championship game, and the last loss they had was the game in late December at FedEx at Northwest Field. And that was in the back of his mind. We remember how they celebrated. It was, if it had been college, they would have stormed the field. Okay. I mean,
man. Okay, pal.
Look, it was a great win. It was a really good win for Washington. It was a shocking win considering they overcame 5 turnovers to win. Play that again for me real quickly. What was the beginning part of it?
This game too. The mindset kind of going into this game too is the last time we played this team, we lost. We kind of gave the game away. That's why you got to be careful what you do. We remember how they celebrated. If this was college, they would have stormed the field. That's what it felt like. So that definitely was on the back of our mind.
So,
we actually talked about this earlier in the show, but I just want to start with this. When you have 5 turnovers, you're the team that's trying to give the game away. Okay? Washington tried to give the game away over and over and over again in that game. You lost a game in which you got 5 takeaways, and a couple of them were just flat out gifts. So, yeah, Devontae Smith dropped a pass, and Jalen Hurts got hurt. But that defense, which last year, that was a 10-game win streak heading into that game in late December. 10 games in a row. And they had pummeled teams like the Rams and the Ravens. Like their defense at that point, it was obvious. It was the best defense in football. And it would prove it after the Washington game, in the postseason and through the Super Bowl. But in that particular game, Washington still to this day, it's almost impossible what they did to score 36 points in an NFL game in which you turned the ball over 5 times. Washington was the team that tried to give the game away. Saquon, your memory on that, just like with the greatest teams in NFL history, is a little bit off. He's become a bit annoying here in the offseason. But you know what? I love it. I love it. Let's start, let them run their mouth in the offseason. And maybe we can get a legitimate rivalry back into our lives. It's been a long time. I know we acted like the Dallas games were big and the Philly games were big, but no one reciprocated. No one on the other side felt the same way during the Snyder era. We were the embarrassing part of the NFC East family. But 3 games, Jayden Daniels, an NFC championship game matchup, 2 late season games this year, some trash talk in the offseason. Again, I just wish they would play earlier. I wish game number 1 was earlier in the season. All right, that's it for the day. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.